This story, based on English Hollywood movie Savage World. In the savage world, survival was everywhere. People scavenged through the ruins, trading their humanity for a scrap of bread or a safe corner to hide. They lived in shadows, trembling at every sound, measuring life only by how long they could last. But Adrian saw something they could not. He realized that to survive without purpose was to die slowly with every passing day. What gave strength was not the next meal, but the vision of what those meals were for. Imagine a man clinging to a piece of driftwood in a stormy sea. Survival keeps him floating, but it is the thought of reaching the shore that gives him the strength to hold on. Without that vision of the shore, the waves will claim him. That is the difference. Survival is holding on, but truly living is swimming toward something greater. Adrian chose to live. In the middle of destruction, he planted seeds in broken soil, not because it was easy, but because it gave meaning to his struggle. While others searched for the next safe hiding place, he searched for the next way to create life. And in that choice, he discovered that to truly live is to risk, to dream, to love, even when the world around you insists that survival alone is enough. Courage often hides behind fear, waiting for the right moment to show itself. Most people think bravery means the absence of fear, but that is not true. Fear is natural. It rushes into your chest when danger appears. It whispers that you are too small, too weak, too broken to face what is ahead. But courage is what happens when you move forward anyway, when you refuse to let fear be the final word. In the savage world, fear was everywhere. The ruins were filled with gangs that ruled through violence. Every corner carried the threat of betrayal. Every night echoed with the sound of hunger. People lived with fear as their closest companion, but most bowed to it. They hid, they obeyed, they gave away their freedom just to feel a little safer. Yet Adrian discovered something powerful. Fear could be a compass. Wherever fear pointed, it showed him exactly where courage was needed most. The first time he stood up to the raiders, his hands trembled, his voice shook, and his legs threatened to give way. He was terrified, but he stood. He did not have a sword, he did not have armor, but he had something they could not take, the will to defend what mattered. And though the raiders mocked him and struck him down, something changed in the hearts of those who watched. They saw that fear could be faced, that it did not have to rule them forever. Courage is not a thunderclap or a sudden blaze of glory. It is often a quiet act, a whisper that says, "I will not give up," even when you are shaking. Adrian's courage was born in the middle of fear, and that is why it mattered. Because courage without fear is only comfort, but courage in the face of fear has the power to inspire and transform. Dreams give strength in the darkest places, like lanterns glowing in endless night. A dream is more than a wish. It is a picture of what could be, a promise whispered to the heart that tomorrow does not have to look like today. When everything else is stripped away, comfort, safety, even hope, a dream is what keeps a person moving forward. In the savage world, most people stopped dreaming. They looked at the rubble around them and believed the future could only be rubble too. They survived, but their eyes were hollow, and their hearts carried the weight of despair. Adrian was different. He carried a dream that one day children would laugh again without fear, families would sit around a fire without listening for footsteps in the dark, and people would plant crops not just to eat, but to celebrate life itself. It seemed impossible. People mocked him, saying, "Your dream is useless. Dreams don't stop bullets. They don't fill empty stomachs." But Adrian knew something they didn't. A dream gives you a reason to fight for food, a reason to risk standing tall, a reason to endure when others collapse. Without a dream, even bread tastes bitter because it serves no greater purpose. With a dream, even hunger can be endured because it points towards something better. Think of the prisoners in ancient stories who carved poems into stone walls, or the explorers who crossed oceans guided only by stars. What kept them alive was not just skill or strength, but the dream of a world waiting for them beyond the suffering. Adrian's dream was no different. It fueled him when his body ached, lifted him when despair whispered, and inspired others when they were too weary to believe. A dream does not erase darkness, but it gives you a light to walk toward. And in a savage world, that light is everything. Every setback carries a hidden lesson, though in the moment, it often feels like nothing more than pain and loss. Failure has a way of crushing the spirit, whispering that all effort was wasted. But the truth is, every stumble teaches us how to walk stronger. Every wound leaves behind wisdom, and every fall prepares us to rise higher than before. In the savage world, Adrian faced setbacks again and again. His garden was destroyed by raiders. His friends abandoned him when the struggle grew too heavy, and more than once he collapsed with nothing left to give. Each time he was tempted to believe the voices that said, "This is pointless. You will never succeed." But he began to notice something. Every setback carved a new strength into him. When his crops were stolen, he learned to plant in hidden corners. When his allies betrayed him, he learned how to recognize loyalty in silence. When he was beaten to the ground, he discovered that even broken bones can heal if the spirit refuses to surrender. Setbacks are not signs that you should quit. They are signs that you are on the path of growth. The fire that burns wood also hardens steel. Adrian realized that if life was testing him, it was also shaping him. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" he began asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" And in that simple shift, defeat became a teacher rather than a prison. Think of Thomas Edison, who, after thousands of failed attempts to invent the light bulb, famously said he had not failed. He had simply found thousands of ways that did not work. Or Nelson Mandela, who endured decades in prison but came out stronger, carrying lessons that helped him heal a divided nation. Adrian's setbacks were smaller in scale, but the principle was the same. Behind every fall, there was a lesson that prepared him for the rise. In a savage world, those who see only loss are consumed by it, but those who search for the lesson turn their wounds into wisdom and their scars into maps that guide others. People, not things, are the real treasure. In a world where everything can be taken, money, houses, possessions, what remains and truly matters are the bonds we form with others. Things can feed the body for a day, but people can nourish the soul for a lifetime. In the savage world, many clung to objects. Some fought over scraps of gold, others killed for old machines, believing these relics would give them power. Yet all those things rusted, vanished, or were stolen. Adrian saw this truth early. No object could keep you alive the way another human could. A hand to lift you when you fall, a voice to remind you not to give up, a friend to guard your back in the night. These were treasures beyond price. At first, he tried to survive alone. It was safer, he thought, because people could betray you, people could hurt you. But loneliness in the ruins was a heavier burden than hunger. One day, when he found a child hiding among collapsed walls, trembling and silent, he made a choice. He could leave her, as many would have done, or he could carry her with him, even though it meant extra risk. He chose the child, and in that moment, his survival gained meaning. He was no longer living just for himself. Later, a woman who had lost everything joined him, bringing strength and skill he never had. Others followed, drawn not by wealth or safety, but by the bond of shared purpose. Together, they endured what no one could have faced alone. Adrian realized that real treasure was not hidden in vaults or buried in the ground. It walked beside him, breathed beside him, and believed with him. Think of Les Miserables, where Jean Valjean's fortune was not gold, but the love and trust he built with those he saved. Or The Little Prince, where the fox teaches that it is the ties we create that make someone precious. Adrian's story echoed that wisdom. In the savage world, the strongest walls were not built from stone, but from loyalty, compassion, and trust. In the end, people are the only wealth that can survive fire, time, and ruin. And those who value people above possessions discover that even in the harshest world, they are never truly poor. Leadership is born in struggle, not in comfort. True leaders are not crowned in times of peace when everything is easy and safe. They are forged in fire, in moments when others are afraid to act, when chaos leaves people searching for direction. Leadership does not begin with power. It begins with responsibility, the choice to step forward when everyone else steps back. In the savage world, no one wanted to lead. To lead meant to take risks, to put yourself in danger, to carry the weight of other people's survival on your shoulders. Most chose silence, hiding in the shadows, thinking only of themselves. But Adrian discovered that leadership was not about being the strongest or the smartest. It was about being the one who refused to walk away when others needed help. When the garden was destroyed, everyone scattered, hopeless and broken. Yet Adrian stayed, standing in the ruins with nothing left. He began gathering pieces of wood to rebuild, even when no one believed it was worth the effort. Slowly, people returned, drawn not to his words, but to his actions. That was leadership, not shouting commands, but showing through example what could be done. Adrian never asked to be followed, but people followed him anyway. They saw that he worked when others rested, that he shared food when he barely had enough for himself, that he stood against raiders when fear gripped his own heart. His scars became his credentials, his endurance, his authority. Think of Martin Luther King Jr., who did not choose easy days but stepped into danger for the sake of justice, or of Gandhi, who led not with armies but with the courage to suffer without striking back. Their leadership was born not from privilege, but from pain. Adrian's story echoed the same truth. The hardest roads are the ones that shape true leaders. In comfort, anyone can appear strong. In struggle, the mask falls away, and only those who truly care for others rise to lead. Leadership, Adrian learned, is not about commanding, it is about serving. And in a savage world, that kind of leadership was the rarest and most powerful force of all. Hope is the greatest weapon in a broken world. It cannot be stolen. It cannot rust. It cannot be burned to ashes. When food runs out, when walls collapse, when strength fades, hope alone can keep a person moving. It is invisible, but it carries more weight than any sword or shield. Without it, even the strongest fall. With it, even the weakest can endure. In the savage world, most people had lost hope. They lived day to day, believing nothing good would ever come again. Their eyes were empty, their voices flat, their spirits crushed. Raiders ruled easily over such people, not because they had more weapons, but because the hopeless had already surrendered inside. Adrian saw this and understood. The real battle was not against hunger or raiders. It was against despair. He carried hope like fire in his chest. When others said, "It is over," he said, "It has only begun." When they saw ruins, he spoke of rebuilding. When they gave up on children growing up free, he told stories of laughter returning. His hope was not blind. It did not deny the danger or the pain, but it refused to let the darkness be the final chapter. There were nights when even Adrian felt hope slipping away, when the cold wrapped around him like chains. But then he remembered the words from Man's Search for Meaning. Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. That why was his vision of a world reborn, and he clung to it as fiercely as others clung to weapons. And slowly, his hope spread. The woman who had lost her family began to smile again. The child he had saved learned to dream again. The hopeless began to look at him and think, if he can believe, maybe I can too. Hope, he realized, was contagious. It multiplied when shared, and it turned frightened survivors into builders of a new tomorrow. In the end, hope was not just his weapon, it was his gift to the savage world. And in that gift, the broken city found the first sparks of life again. Change begins with one brave decision. Not 100 plans, not 1,000 speeches, just a single moment when someone dares to choose differently. That choice may look small at first, but like a spark in dry grass, it spreads until it becomes a fire that cannot be ignored. In the savage world, most people waited. They waited for safety, for strength, for someone else to lead the way. Fear chained them to inaction, and in waiting, they surrendered their future. But Adrian understood that waiting never changes anything. Change comes only when someone stands up and says, enough. His first brave decision was simple: to plant seeds in soil everyone else had abandoned. People laughed at him, called him a fool, said nothing would grow in ruins. But when the first green shoots pushed through the dirt, something shifted, not just in the earth, but in the hearts of those who watched. That one decision proved that even destruction could give birth to life. Later, when raiders came demanding surrender, Adrian faced another decision. He could hand over everything to save himself, or he could resist and risk losing it all. His voice trembled, his body shook, but he chose resistance. He chose to stand, and though he was beaten, his courage lit a flame in others who had been silent too long. That moment became a turning point. People who had once bowed in fear began to rise. History is filled with these small but mighty choices. Rosa Parks choosing not to give up her seat. Malala choosing to speak when silence was safer. Their decisions were dangerous, but they broke chains that had bound millions. Adrian's story echoed the same truth. Great change is never born from comfort, but from one person daring to act when it matters most. In a savage world, where despair whispers that nothing can improve, one brave decision is enough to prove otherwise. It is the first domino, the first stone in a wall, the first drop in a river. And once it begins, no power can stop it from spreading. Even in chaos, humanity can be reborn. Destruction may erase buildings, erase laws, erase entire systems, but it cannot erase the human spirit unless we allow it. The savage world was filled with fire, hunger, and violence, yet inside those ashes lay the seed of something new, a chance to begin again. For most, chaos meant the end. They looked at the ruins and believed the story was finished. But Adrian believed otherwise. He saw chaos not only as loss, but also as space, the clearing of what once was, making room for what could be. Just as a forest fire can burn everything to the ground, yet leave behind soil rich for new growth, he saw that humanity, though scarred, could rise again stronger than before. It started with small acts: a child's laughter returning after years of silence, a woman sharing food she could barely spare, strangers protecting one another instead of fighting. These moments were fragile, almost invisible, but together they signaled that humanity had not died. It was waking up. Adrian's garden, his courage, his hope. These were sparks that lit a new kind of fire, one not of destruction, but of renewal. History reminds us that after every collapse, after wars, after disasters, after tragedies, people have always found ways to rebuild, often creating societies wiser than before. From the ruins of Rome came a renaissance of art and thought. From the ashes of wars came movements for peace and justice. The same was possible in the savage world, because chaos is never the final word. It is the soil of rebirth. Adrian knew this. Humanity is not defined by its darkest hours, but by what it chooses to create after them. In every act of kindness, in every dream spoken aloud, in every decision to rise instead of surrender, humanity was writing a new story. The savage world remained dangerous, but in the cracks of its chaos, flowers began to bloom. And that was the greatest lesson of all. Even when everything falls apart, the spirit of humanity can always, always be born again.